You read the first part of it, right? And how far would the second page take you?
It took you up to, I think it took me up to the, right up to surgery.
Well, you know about
Is
my,
that right?
anyway, I'll start this way, okay? And I pretty well don't have to more or less think about it, you know. I know it, you know what I'm saying? And after the Vietnam thing and everything, see, I still wasn't saved. That's the key of this thing. So I went to work on September the 8th, and I got exposed to H2S gas, which is hydrogen sulfide. It's like an odor when you smell the egg, it's too late, okay? So the two boys that was with me, they was out in the area. I was the operator that morning, and I didn't even have to go out, but I volunteered because I was always physical conditioned and everything, and always was in baseball and all, so I was just like them now, really, you know. So I went out, but just as I went out the door, I kind of smelled it. Well, the other two boys was up on the tank. Okay, so I was strong enough when it hit me. I pushed the door open and got my head back into the door. Well, probably from that time, I really don't really remember what happened, but they took me out in a stretcher. They got me to Cumberland Hospital here, Memorial Hospital here in Cumberland, and things was real bad, you know. The gas, the fumes had got into my lung, and it started pumping everywhere, so I was unconscious for a good while. But I did finally get out of the hospital and everything, and I started getting real bad headaches. Seemed like every time I went somewhere or done something, the doctor said that if the headache persisted, that we'd probably have to go or have a surgery, because they felt that the lung part of my body was pushing the oxygen from which it does, from my lung to the backside of my brain. But the fumes of the gas was causing all of the headaches and stuff, and there was no way they could treat it. This went on for like, I don't know, 6 months maybe. And of course Bonnie and family, of course they all knew what was going on, but every doctor I went to said it was too dangerous for me to have surgery here. And there's no way that they would even try to perform a surgery on the back of my brain because of the situation. The longer the gas was, or the fumes was in there, the swelling was persist. It was continuous swelling. My wife's been in church all of her life. My wife's family's been in church all of her life. Real Christian Pentecost. And so it went on. I went to see several doctors in the area, and they kept saying, there's just no way that we can perform surgery on him. So the last time we got more or less the office, Dr. Genuine said, look, take him home, make him as comfortable as possible, because if it's not broke, don't fix it. In other words, I was sitting there waiting on my time to go. It was going to rupture. They just didn't know when. So that was that was probably in maybe July, August, something like that. I'm not sure exactly the date, but anyway, I came home, and 2 weeks later, Dr. Genuine called home and said, Bonnie, he said, can you take Mr. Lowe down to Baltimore to the brain clinic? And of course, we was all, we was just kind of hoping that something would happen. So they took me down to Baltimore. And at that time, Tanner, I was just kind of living day by day. Headaches on top of headaches. I mean, it was awful. I mean, I didn't know where I was at. I'd get them headaches. There was no medicine that they'd give me would control them. So when I walked in down there, they was waiting on me. When the first, and I met a lady, a doctor, and you know, as a man like myself, I thought, oh no, are you kidding me? And they said, no, Mr. Lowe, we're just here to check your records. You're going up and see Dr. Rigamoni at the Redwood Building, big office, big brain clinic in Baltimore. And I said, you know, of course, my wife, she took me up, and he was waiting on me. He had already looked at all my records, everything that they did here in Cumberland and all. And the first thing he said to me when we went in the office, I'll never forget it, we sat down and we had a private session. And Mr. Lowe, you know, this is something that we're going to have to do a lot of praying about. We're going to have to believe that this thing is going to work, but we're going to have to start all over again. And we're going to have to pray that you're going to be okay until, or the Lord touches you. And I thought, wow, what is going on? I wasn't a Christian. Like I said, my family was. But before that, I'll never forget it, when all these doctors in my area was saying, you have no chance. My mother-in-law said called us up, and we went up and talked to her one night, and she said, I don't care what the doctors say. I know that you're going to be okay. You just keep working and keep going and keep doing the things you're doing, and believe me, you're going to be okay. And I kept that in the back of my mind, because I knew that there was a reason why I was in Baltimore. I couldn't figure it out, didn't know what was going on. I wasn't a Christian. But you know, when I got to that point with Dr. Rigamoni, something came over me. On October the 10th, after all the tests that Dr. Rigamoni ran and everything, I was still living. They gave me 6 months to live.
When did the accident happen?
September the 8th, 1998.
So it's been almost a year.
Yeah, almost a year.
A little bit over a year.
Well, from September to October.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway, Dr. Rigamoni called us in, and we went to Baltimore 52 times. Yeah, 52 times my wife drove me to Baltimore. More than that, because it wasn't quite a year. Mm-hmm. So anyway, and we stayed down. Of course, Westfago was paying this bill. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But anyway, he said to me and Bonnie, he said, you know, this is a big decision, but we have to believe that things are going to be okay. And the only way we can do that is believe that he can take this operation. It's probably going to be one of the longest operations that's been performed as far as the brain goes. He's probably going to be in the operating room 10 hours to 14 hours. So on October the 10th, we went down on the 9th, and they was going to perform the operation on the 10th. Well, when I went in the operating room, I was in the operating room for 32 hours, non-stop. I came out of the operating room. There were 7 surgeons, and Dr. Rigamoni stayed with me for 28 hours. So the thing was, you know, they induced me into a coma because I was swelled up so bad, but my both sides hung out of the bed, on the hospital bed. My head was twice the size it is. So they really didn't think that I was going to pull through. But Dr. Rigamoni told my family every time he seen us and every time he said anything to us, the first word he said was, we need a lot of prayer. We need to know that there's somebody else got their hands in this thing besides us doctors. So you got to realize that under the circumstances and everything, after I had that surgery, I was so weak, and I'm in a coma. There's no way that I knew what was going on or what was happening. But of course they did. And when I came out of surgery, or when they finished up in the coma, they seen that I had developed a blood clot between my brain and my lung. And if it moves any way, it's going to kill me. So Dr. Rigamoni told my wife after when I came out of the coma, said, look, we know that blood clot's there. We have to go in as soon as we can. We don't know whether he can stand the operation or not. He's under 24-hour surveillance. He's under 24-hour protection. He's so weak that we don't even know whether we can go in to get the blood clot. I was in a situation where I was just under control. They controlled everything they did to me by needles. Of course, my throat was opened. At one time, it was completely open because they had to control all the air and everything going in me because of the infection that was in. And I did get an infection, and they thought that was going to take me out. They called my family in. Now this is going on this like the third month. Things was really, what you'd say was really bad. So when they put me up on intensive care, well, double what they call high intensive care, Benita and Roseanne and all the family was there, and Bonnie, and so whatever caused Benita. But Benita came home, and the pastor that was in Bonnie's mom's church, Benita asked him, said, Daddy really needs you to come down and pray for him, because things are not real good, it just don't, So him and his wife came down to Baltimore, and had some people in there from the Orals and organization and everything, and that's the night that I guess you could say that when the Lord stepped in. That blood clot was there. They all knew it. It's just a matter of time of them trying to. But I'd been through so much that everybody just didn't want to do anything with it. So therefore, that night is when the pastor and his wife and my family, they all led me to the Lord. And I guess you could say, I'm sure in church, you know how when things work out, and you get feeling Jesus and the Lord close to you, that there's something that just kind of, so I was crying. So they all left, because as I cried myself to sleep. I don't remember them leaving, but I remember me talking to Jesus. I remember me saying to him, Lord, if this is the way this is supposed to be, and I felt a heating sensation over my head that I will never forget. It was unbelievable hot.
Did it hurt, or was it just burn?
Huh?
Did it hurt?
Heat.
Did it hurt?
Yeah. No, it didn't hurt.
Just hot.
It just heat. It just a heating sensation. And I remember it putting me to sleep. I said to the next morning, Bonnie came in. Me and Bonnie, we communicated for at least 2 months, 3 months at that time by our hands. So I couldn't speak. I had tubes in my throat. I had tubes all over me, you know. Bonnie came in to me that morning and said to me, she said, there's something different about you. She said, honey, you okay? And I squeezed once for yes and squeezed twice for no. And I squeezed and she, of course, she started crying. 3 or 4 days later, and bringing to the point, 3 or 4 days later is when Dr. Rigamani and them had done all the tests and everything, and the blood clot was swelling. I mean, I'm sorry, sooner, days before that. And Dr. Rigamani called my family in, and the other doctors, and said, look, Roger or Buck, whatever they call me. They was calling me by my first name at that time, because I'd been there so long. Mm-hmm. Said, I want you, you know, he's going downstairs this morning. He's going to be in the operating room 6 or 7 hours. Said, you go in there in the waiting room and whatever, just pray and believe that he's going, if he gets through this surgery, I think he's strong, I think he'll make it. But we got to go get that blood clot. That blood clot's got to come out of there. So they took me in, prepared me for surgery. They got me to actually going to the, preparing me, because see, I was under a converter. They had a nurse on my right side and a nurse on my left side for 24 hours, every day, round the clock. And the nurses were so close to me that they would talk to me about baseball all the time. Baseball. And their kids. They wanted me to work with their kids. When I got out of there, you know, it was always that. There was something just to keep me going. I couldn't speak, couldn't communicate, but they knew. And they did that just to, and I would smile.
Just keep it going.
Yeah, you'd say baseball, I'd smile. You know, if you'd say Jim Gilbert, which was my scouting director, I would smile. If you'd say my son's going to play, you know, I would smile.
How old is your son at this point?
40. Oh, at that point? No, and he was probably 19 or something like that. He was just senior in 18. He was a senior in high school or a freshman in college. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But anyway, when they took me downstairs, I don't know, you know, when you go in them rooms, they got computer screens all over, you know. And of course I laid there and I couldn't, because I was blind. The surgery took my right field of my right eye, which is a large, oh yeah, it's gone completely. So I can't see, if I'm laying here, I can't even see you. I gotta turn clear over here to see you.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Jim mentioned it, but I was like,
yeah.
I thought it was partial.
Yeah. So anyway, I laid there, you know, and of course, I wasn't like I am now. I mean, I was really bad shape, you know what I'm saying? So I didn't really know what was going on. You know, I was in and out, and they kept me drugged up and everything. But anyway, the nurse on my left side was just I mean, she just washed over me like, you know, I mean, she was awesome. But anyway, they was looking and everything, and when they come to the foot of my bed, they just kept looking at me and looking at me, and I kept looking and I couldn't respond. But the nurse kept rubbing my hand, and when she got to the point, and I did kind of dur my head just a little bit, and I seen her, and her tears was coming out of her eyes. And I heard one doctor say, I don't know what's going on. There's something, this is not real. So I thought, you know, you always think negative, you know, it's crazy, but that's just the way, that's the way it goes, you know. Mm-hmm. And so I looked, and the little nurse was actually tears coming out of her eyes. So I don't know whether they had me and they'd want to drug me up or what, but I kind of went. But I heard the doctor say, we've never seen this before. This is something that we don't understand. We're going to have to see get Dr. Rigamani and find out. Dr. Rigamani's a surgeon. He's the one that we need to get a hold of. So they said, well, call doctor and said, Dr. Rigamani comes down. I'll never forget this. And they're talking, Dr. Rigamani, that blood clot's gone. There's no blood clot there. So Dr. Rigamani just smiled. I'll never forget him smiling. Said, whatever, Mr. Lowe or whatever, button him back up, take him back up. He don't need no surgery. The blood clot's gone. Praise the Lord. He took me back upstairs. And Dr. Rigamani came up. My family's there. My boy, my 2 girls. He come to the foot of my bed, Tanner. He didn't do anything. The first thing he did was took his hands out the foot of my bed and said, let me tell you something. He said, that blood clot's gone. He said, my hands didn't do it. None of the surgeons did it. He said, Mr. Lowe or Buck, whatever, he said, you have a real friend. You serve him the rest of your life. Because, I tell you, he took that blood clot away. He told, not even 10 days later, he come in, because he come in every morning. He was a runner. He was a conditioner. This guy was the 3rd best neurological surgeon in the United States. That's who they brought in. He came in 10 days later and he said, Roger or whatever, he said, if you can keep orange juice down, we're going to start taking them tubes out of you. He said, because we know now that the Lord touched you and you're going to be okay. So we're going to get rid of this stuff. That was in November. 1st of November, I was supposed to be in the hospital probably around January, February. I came home for Christmas. I came home. Of course, when they brought me home, I came home in the bed. Really bad. But I came home, and I started laying in there. And this Sunday, my wife, I'll never forget it, said, "Honey, if you want to go to church, yeah, get that.